Hello.
Hi everybody. Um, a very warm welcome to everyone to this event hosted by the Society of Scottish Artists. I am Rona and I'm the new Vice President of the SSA, and we've also got Jenny Pope on here who you can see. And Jenny is an artist and a life coach, and she is also on our council as well. So welcome, Jenny. Thanks very much for doing this evening.
Thank you.
We've got people on here on Zoom, and we've also got some people on YouTube. So I think it's mainly our members, but there may be some people who aren't members of the SSA. So a very warm welcome to you as well. If you don't know who we are the biggest artist-run membership organisation in Scotland. And we've got members all over the world as well, not just here. So if you are from somewhere else as well, it'd be really nice to hear where people are tuning in from tonight. This is the first of 3 short events that we're running this week as part of Mental Health Awareness Week. The aim of these is really to connect with our membership community and to share some tools that we hope will be really helpful and positive for everybody. Obviously, we are an arts organisation, we are not a mental health support service. So if you are facing bigger challenges at the moment, or you feel that you need greater support, then please do contact your GP. You'll notice that this is a webinar, which means that it's one way. So you can see me and you can see Jenny, obviously. We cannot see you, and we have no way of seeing you. So we appreciate that there are kind of limitations to this as a format. We thought that it was the best way of doing these events this week, but we will be doing some other events coming up in the future where people can feel a little bit more involved. But we have got the chat box there, and we would really encourage people to ask questions or just to say hello as well. Please bear with us because this is a new format for us, and it's the first one that we're doing this week as well. So it's the first webinar that we've run. We have got an admin here as well. You'll see there's 3 boxes that you can see. If it does drop out for any reason, or if Jenny or I disappear for any reason, then you can just rejoin with the same link. And as I say, just please do bear with us. We'll try and keep it down to the 30 minutes. So we'll try and make sure that it's finished by 8 o'clock. But if we do run over, then apologise for that. But we will try and keep it down to the half hour. If you need to leave at any point, it doesn't disrupt anybody if you do. So that's fine. You can just leave, and we're not offended by that. And I mentioned the chat box. So please do use that. It'd be lovely just for people to say hello. There's an option to send things to the panelists. That's me and Jenny and the administrator, or to send to everybody. So we'd encourage you to use all panelists and attendees, and it means that everybody can see that. And on that point, we would say, please do not share anything private or personal. So please do bear in mind that there are lots of people here. You don't know who they are. You know, it's a friendly bunch of people, but at the same time, it's not good to share private information. And I think Jenny would.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, echo that. So if we could just start off. So Jenny, as I say, is an artist, so she has her own practice and is also a life coach. Now, a lot of people on here probably don't know what being a life coach means, and they might not understand how it differs from something like counselling. So could you maybe talk us through a little bit about that and what we can expect?
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for asking me to come along. Coaching is solution focused, and it's thinking about looking at problems and finding different ways to solve them. It's a conversational approach. It's quite pragmatic. It is based in psychology. It doesn't come up with any magic answers, but what it does do is it gives people a space to really think about what is going on for them at the moment and think about practical solutions for that. People often talk about it as a space and a time to think and to reflect on things that are going on in their life at the moment. One of the ways I think about coaching and counselling is that I think of coaching is architecture, where it's about building on good foundations and thinking about the future and the present and sort of building a framework in which to understand your life. And counselling is more like archaeology, where you're exploring and delving into depths and making sense of the past, both of which are very useful and they can be complementary. You need good foundations to build the structure, but sometimes you need to explore what's been going on in order to move forward from that. Both can happen in different ways. I definitely do coaching, but I also work with people. I have some clients who have counselling and psychotherapy at the same time. So they don't have to be mutually separate, but in each coaching conversation, it's very much built on the present and thinking about solutions. So yes, it's a very useful way of exploring what's going on, and it can give people a lot of skills and a lot of coping strategies and really practical ways to address things for themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
And kind of thinking about things at the moment, obviously, you know, this is something quite extraordinary that people are dealing with at the moment. So either from contact with your clients or from your own experience or from elsewhere, could you just kind of maybe tell us, you know, some of the challenges that you've noticed particularly, and how people perhaps, you know, are there patterns to how people are reacting to what's going on?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it's affecting everybody. We're all affected differently. I like the analogy of we're all in different boats but in the same storm. So some people's boats are really big and luxurious and quite comfortable, and other people's boats are really sugary and unsafe and dangerous. So we all might be in the same storm, but we're all affected differently, whether it's in terms of our finances, whether it's our art practice, or whether it's family relationships and where we live. And it's got elements of redundancy about this. It's got elements of external worries and sort of global issues. It's got elements of sort of health crisis. So there's a whole load of things that are going on in this big mix, and everyone's affected differently. I do think that it feels like a bit of a marathon, really, and where we started in terms of a crisis and lockdown and really a very strong sense of this is what we needed to do. It feels more as the weeks have gone on that we're in this sort of more vague, uncertain, what are the rules, how is this going to pan out? So I feel like I'm in a bit of a marathon where I've suddenly realised I'm in for a long haul, and I have to gather my breath every now and again to sort of, you know that I'm going to keep going, and we don't actually know how we're going to keep going and in what way. So we're having to use loads of different strategies to cope with this, and some people are doing it in some way better than others, or managing better than others. I think better is not a good word, because we're all doing the best we can, and we're all in many ways making it up as we go along. The governments and the health professionals are as well. They're using science, but we are having to sort of really dig deep on our inner resources to get through this, and people are coming up with really creative, amazing ways to do that, which is brilliant. And particularly as artists, I think we've got the great opportunity to be creative as a way of doing that.
Yeah, and obviously the name of this event is Coping Strategies.
Yeah.
So could you explain a little bit about what those might be and how they could be useful for people at the moment?
I suppose it's about thinking about psychology and thinking about applying really practical skills as a way of day-to-day coping with things in a world where we really don't have a lot of control over external environment, and about breaking things down into manageable chunks that we can have a solution for, which feels within our grasp, grasp and which feels achievable. So it's about breaking down the big unwieldliness of this into something which feels manageable. So maybe this might lead really well into the first exercise. Well, here we go. We'll do an old sharing thing here. Here we go. Woof. There you go. So, this is our first exercise, and I'm thinking about what we can and what we can't have control of at the moment. And my invitation to everybody who's listening here today is to think about, and I actually did this myself, I had a big bit of paper and I drew 2 big circles on it to think about what I can and what I can't control at the moment. And one of the ways this is really useful is it sort of can help with that sort of 3, 4, 5 in the morning worries about all the things in your head, and that sort of soup of anxieties that can face us sometimes, and separating the 2 things out into some things which are more manageable and that you can have control of, and the ones which you really can't at all. So the things that you can have control over are things like how much you watch the news, who you spend time with, who you make connections with, what stuff you read, how much fresh air you get, what things you eat, how you are creative. Those are all the things, for example, that you can control. The things you can't control are the external information and the news. They're about whether your studio's closed or not, whether your income's been reduced, whether you have any specific health things that are happening to you at the moment. So there's lots of things that you can't control, and it's quite good to separate those out and then to think about reframing some of them in a way which might be more helpful to you. So one of the things about the reframing might be something about being under lockdown and being indoors. That could be seen as a confinement and a containment. It also could be seen as a sort of sheltering in place and somewhere which is safe to be. So there's different ways of looking at being within 4 walls and not going out as much as we used to. So it's that example of sort of shifting things around in our head. I heard somebody recently speak of this as because she can't get to a studio, she saw this as a sabbatical and like a residency at home. So she reframed it wasn't something she'd chosen to do, but it was something that she was making an opportunity of in a different way and approaching a practice in a way which she hadn't had time to do before or hadn't got into the way of doing before. So it's quite helpful to separate these 2 things out, because there are lots of things in the terms of you can control to focus on and to pay attention to. And also one of the nice questions about things that you can be in control of is to think of the things that you're grateful for. And those can be really small things as well as big things. Like, being able to listen to the bird song in the morning, or being grateful for a nice, handmade mug to have your coffee in. And sometimes this separating out the 2 lists of things means that you can really pay attention to some of the stuff which you maybe hadn't noticed before because you were bothering about everything.
It's interesting as well about the noticing, I think, because a lot of people have kind of mentioned that as something, even just the sort of the small things, because everyone's world has got that bit smaller.
Yes.
Quite interesting. People, I notice the bird song and things like that, and it is quite interesting that you do notice those different things, and it's really nice and really positive.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And I think that's it. It can be seen as an opportunity as long as we put the can't control things in a sort of way where there's an allowing to be with those things rather than a fighting against them. And that allowing to be with uncertainty and allowing that allowing to be alongside those things can be really helpful, rather than trying to understand things or make sense of something which actually doesn't have any sense to it.
Yeah, I think at the moment as well, because people, there's so much that I think people feel like they're not in control of. There feels like so many things that are so big.
Yes.
So would you recommend that people actually do this, that they write that down of things that they can?
Yes, yeah, my invitation would be that you can get this as a PDF. We can send that to you afterwards if you put your email in the chat box. The administrator can send that to you afterwards. And then to spend a bit of time doing this, because it is really nice to reflect, because actually the more you think about it, the more things that will come up in terms of the things that you can't control, that can come up in a nice and quite sort of encouraging way. So yes, my invitation to you is to spend some time reflecting on this. And I would say that if at any point this doesn't feel right and it feels uncomfortable and it makes you more worried, then stop doing it, because this is a way of helping you think about control. But if it gets a bit overwhelming, then stop. It might not be the right time to do it for you. Okay. So maybe if there's any questions about that, or we could move on to the next thing.
Do you want to move on to the next thing, and then if people have got questions, they can ask that. I realise that there's a Q&A as well.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm going to keep my eyes on both of those. I think
Sure.
those answered those ones. So yeah, if people have got any comments or anything like that you'd like Jenny to answer, then please just pop that in the chat box.
Right. Okay.
So if you want to, do you want to move on? Oh yes, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. I've moved on. So this is the next exercise, and this will take a bit of time to do. And this is a way of mapping out your current resources. The reason for doing this is about thinking about the whole wealth of resources that you have in your life, and maybe noticing things that you had taken for granted, or you'd forgotten about, or you just assume were there anyway, but actually they could be really useful to you at the moment. And to think about this in a sort of brainstorming way, and it's really quite nice to do it visually. So you could have a big piece of paper and you could write this down, you could put post-it notes up. And this should feel a good exercise to do in terms of what do I enjoy? What brings me happiness and increases my energy? And think about the positive things and what you actually enjoy doing. And think about your skills and what you're good at, what experience you've got, and what could be useful about this. Thinking about your inner strengths and what do you fall back on when times are hard, and what has helped you in tough times before. Because none of us have had an easy life up to now. We've all had difficulties, and how have we coped with them before, and what are we calling upon? What inner resources have we got that we're going to have to dig deep, and we are using at the moment. And then thinking about physical things and objects, any equipment, supplies, things to share or exchange. It's really nice at the moment. I'm part of a Facebook group where we're exchanging plants, and it's really nice to do that. It's a very small thing, but it makes me feel really happy to do that. And something about what knowledge you have and what have you learned and what would be valuable to others. This is something which you may have learned about in the past and you haven't used for a while. Then can somehow get lost, and we can sort of take it for granted that we've forgotten something that has been really valuable to us in the past. Thinking about your online connections as well, and where do you have a presence, and where do you find connection with people online. Thinking about the people that you know as well, friends, family, colleagues and neighbours. And I'm thinking here particularly about collaborations and connections and support. One of the greatest strengths that we do have as a group of artists and makers is that our connections with other people, and really a lot of us are going to get through this by collaborating with other people and joining together and finding connections, and we can already see the way we're doing that, and that's really good. and something about the places where you can go and where you can go at the moment. And I know that that's sort of limited, but where locally can you go, and what makes sense at the moment, and what can you discover, and what can you find out that you maybe didn't pay attention to, that is sort of right on your doorstep. So this is a resource for you to gather for yourself and to think about, and it might just be enough in and of itself just to reassure yourself that there is a lot of good stuff going on in your life, and a lot of things which are that you have got, which are tangible and intangible, which are a whole sort of resource for you. It could also be, if you want it to, something to think about where this could take you next. And I'm particularly thinking about people whose livelihood and their income has been affected by the coronavirus, and people whose art practice has been bringing them income before, and also people who run workshops and teach and that sort of thing. So for those people, this might be useful to think about where they could focus their energies next. What I'm not wanting to sort of put any pressure on anybody is about thinking about being productive and sort of planning ahead and coming up with all sorts of stuff. Because for some people that might be helpful, but for a lot of people now is quite a stressful time, and our productivity is quite low because our heads are so full of just coping with day-to-day getting by. So while this is a great resource that we can think about and develop, I wouldn't put any pressure on yourself to take that forward unless it feels right to do that, unless you can see actual connections that make sense for you to do that.
Can I ask you, Jenny, you've mentioned about online connections there and things. Can I ask, do you have any kind of strategies for using social media at the moment? Because it's obviously, like, I find it quite stressful if I go on to, especially certain types of social media like Twitter and things, they can get quite overwhelming. Do you have any kind of tips that you could give people about how to sort of cope with that?
Well, I would really keep news to a minimum, to be honest. I would really keep, because the news is negative, and it's not that helpful, and it's repetitive. So I would keep any news resources to a minimum. Would keep those to a time during the day where you're not going to sort of dwell on them if that sort of going to upset you or aggravate you. And I would surround yourself by positive, reassuring things and upbeat. There's quite a lot of positive psychology. There's quite a lot of fun stuff out there as well, which is really good. I think this is a long haul. Keep looking at the same news is not that helpful. I think looking at positive things is really good. And surround yourself by people that make you feel good. And if anybody's putting lots of stuff up there which is feeling like it's dragging you down emotionally, is to sort of give it a bit of a break at the moment, maybe. We don't have to listen to people go on about stuff if it's upsetting us or dragging us down, but there's a lot of social media stuff out there which is really good. On this worksheet, I've got some list of resources on from Instagram which I find really useful and uplifting, so you can have access to that. I think it's really nice to connect with other people, and it's quite nice to know that other people are struggling a bit sometimes, but also to know when people are having, like all the sales for the artist pledge that people are doing at the moment. It's really nice. That's all really good to see. That's really lovely.
So we're actually, this is going, because time is running away with us. So if we were to move on to the next thing that you were talking about.
Next one, yes. The next one is about creating a good habit. I think sometimes we can get a bit ahead of ourselves, thinking about plans and dreams and, stretching ahead. But sometimes what's quite good is making a good habit. And if you have lots of good habits, or you build on good habits, that's a really small step that's manageable. this is information that's adapted from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, which is a really practical way of thinking about doing a good habit and incorporating it into your life. So I've suggested thinking of a way of being kind to yourself. The Mental Health Awareness Week this week is thinking about kindness as its main theme, and I think that's either they've chosen that particularly or it's a brilliant focus this year. It's really important to be kind to ourselves, so I'm suggesting you think of a new way to be kind to yourself, something nourishing, enjoyable, easy. That could be something like spending a few minutes every day thinking about 3 things you're grateful for, remembering to take your vitamin tablets, having a cup of coffee in the fresh air, texting or WhatsApping a friend daily and checking in with them. One of the things about the good habits is to, there's 4 parts: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. So it's about breaking the process. So this is not about willpower and determination. This is a very practical approach to incorporating another habit into your life. So that's setting an intention. I will take my vitamin tablets at 8 o'clock every morning in the kitchen, and thinking about your current habits and what you might stack it onto. So stack the current habit onto something else when you have your cup of coffee, your first cup of coffee in the morning. And then you can design your environment and make the cues obvious and visible. Put your vitamin tablets by the kettle in the morning.
Mine are by the kettle.
Say that again?
Mine are by the kettle.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't remember if you left them in the, cupboard, would you? Absolutely. This is very practical, clear, common sense stuff. And then you also make the habit attractive by pairing it with something else you want to do. Like you want to have your cup of coffee in the morning, and then you have your cup of coffee afterwards as a sort of reward that you've done it. And you also decrease the number of steps to get started. So you don't make it complicated. You don't have them in the cupboard. You lay them out ready. You prime the environment, and you do the habit, if it's something a bit longer than vitamins, for a minimum of 2 minutes. So what is the absolute minimum you could do something for? Like if you decide you're going to go for a jog every day, what is the minimum you could do for a jog? You could just run to the end of the street and back. And then each day becomes a win rather than, oh, I should have gone for 20 minutes and I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing is a habit tracker, which is really good to see how many days you've done it for. The 100-day challenge is a really good way of doing that. A lot of people do that because it's quite nice to fit in something and know you've done it each day. And that also gives you some support from other people as well.
Is that something you can do? Is that an app or something that you can get?
The 100 day, I think it's 100 Days Scotland.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's one that's just started. But it's the idea that you do something alongside other people, and you're all doing it together for a certain amount of time, and that sort of reinforces and keeps you going and sort of encourages you to keep going and not stop. So James Clear's book's really good, and it's quite readable, and it's not about it's not about determination and willpower. It's about designing and structuring a good habit, and it's very practical, and so it's quite accessible to read that book. Yeah. So, any thoughts on that, Rona?
Yeah, I think it's that thing of kind of tacking it on to something else, isn't it? Because it's quite easy for all that. I know everyone's got lots of different distractions at the moment.
Yeah.
But actually there are some things that are reasonably easy to kind of do. I think the exercise thing as well is, and the not sort of beating yourself up if you don't, go for a run for an hour or whatever, but going for a short run or just actually sometimes, just leaving the house.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that actually it's a good thing to kind of just really note when you've done those positive things. Because I think it can I find that the bad habits can establish themselves as much as the good habits can.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, yeah. And I think at the moment where we're indoors a lot, then it's quite easy to lose some of the other good habits which we used to have. So it's important to pay attention to the good habits and feel good that we've gone out and got some fresh air, and that we've had some fresh vegetables, and we've spoken to somebody, because it's quite easy to withdraw a bit from the world, I think, sometimes. And that's while that can be nice and peaceful sometimes, it's good to maintain some sort of momentum about things.
Definitely. That thing of maintaining those connections, I think, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I move on to so that's the 3 activities, the coping strategies, which I invite people to do in their own time, to take the worksheet away. So some of the resources I've suggested that people look at. So James Clear is here on Instagram. And so Dr. Chatterjee also has stuff about habits changing, and he's really good and clear about that. And then the other schools are Happiness Project UK and the School of Life London and Museum Happiness. I follow those, and like you said, Rona, they're in terms of social media, they're really good about giving you little pick me up sort of hints and quotes. You might like them, you might get something from them. And On Being and Brain Picker are longer articles about well-being, and they're quite mindfulness based, which I know that we're moving on to later in the week, and about grounding. So they're really more about pausing and presence, and about being in the moment in a way which is helpful and particularly useful at the moment.
Great.
Yeah. And then
I was just going to ask how people could see this, but I think that we've just had a message saying that, yeah, if anyone wants to get this as a PDF, then they can do.
Yeah. So that's a bit about me. I offer mentoring and coaching. At the moment, I'm offering reduced rate one-off sessions for artists and creative people affected by the pandemic. And I'm also making some kits to do with wellbeing focuses, which I send out to people. And I suppose that's my way of doing something rather than running workshops and having exhibitions. I'm using my materials and enjoying doing that, and sending them out to people and getting people to collect them from my house in a sort of local way. So that's me enjoying myself and being useful and living, being true to my values as well. So I'm really enjoying doing that.
Yeah, and you're in Edinburgh, are you?
Yes, yeah. I'm in Portobello, but I send the kits out and people pick them up as well.
And that's got, yes, it's got all your details on there. Great. So if anyone does want that, then we can send that out to you if you send a message on there.
Yeah.
That to you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, I suppose those are invitations to people, and to spend a bit of time looking at them, have a cup of coffee, bit of cake, sit down and think about your current resources and what you've got, and do that in an arty, creative, big bit of paper, pens, post-it notes. Think about how to create a good habit. That would be a good thing to do. Maybe look at James Clear's information. There's also BJ Hogg, I think, as well. No, Fogg. BJ Fogg is another person thinking about habits. And also this idea about change and what things you can change, things you can't change. That's really useful to stop that sort of worry in the night stuff, which can get us all sometimes.
Yeah. Well, listen, Jenny, thank you ever so much. I think that's us just kind of able to wrap up now, actually. So that's been really useful. Hope everyone else has found it useful as well.
Yeah. Okay. If there's any questions that we haven't answered, then people can email me. If they can't answer specific to the worksheets, then do email me, and if I can help clarify those, then I'm very happy to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Jenny, and thank you very much to everyone who's joined us as well on here and on YouTube. you're very welcome, and we appreciate you coming as well. So just obviously, again, just to reiterate that we can't offer you advice. So if you are struggling, or if you need more support, to contact your GP, or, as Jenny mentioned, the organisers of Mental Health Awareness Week, which that's the Mental Health Foundation. They are at mentalhealth.org.uk, and they have quite good resources on there. As we're just learning about in the chat as well, we've got 2 more events coming up this week as part of Mental Health Awareness Week. So on Thursday night at 7:30, we've got something called Staying Grounded, and that is going to be another quite a short session, but it's going to be a few techniques from a mindfulness-based cognitive therapist who's going to give some sort of share some tools that might be useful for people. So that's a kind of meditation based session, and that will be on Thursday evening. And then on Saturday morning, we've got something called Resources for Wellbeing, and that's going to be a session that will just give people some kind of tips and on places that they can go for more help, and just a bit of, as it says, resources for people to kind of stay well at the moment. So I hope people can join us at those. We would love you to not to see you, but for you to join us. So you're very warmly invited to those as well. But thank you very much for coming. I think that's us.
Yeah. Keep well, keep safe, keep positive when doing things, and when you need to have a rest and a break and take it easy, do that as well. But yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
very much. You stay well as well, Jenny.
Take care then. Bye bye.